Hello, and welcome to the Intelligent Inbound podcast brought to you by SmartBug Media. I'm your host, Jen Spencer, and today I'm speaking with Christina Rice, who is Chief Operating Officer at Pyx Health. Now, if you're not familiar with Pyx, they are the leading solution for loneliness and social isolation through technology and human connection, which I think is pretty cool. There's a lot of research that's found that loneliness will increase mortality rates and annual patient treatment costs at similar rates like you would see with chronic diseases. And so I just think it's so exciting what Pyx is doing and how they're offering both patients and healthcare providers a really innovative and scalable solution that's working to address this U.S. health epidemic. So really, really exciting company. Christina, as COO, took a big leap out of the corporate world to really strive to make a meaningful and direct impact on mental health care. And her responsibilities as CEO cover nearly every part of the company. So she's managing like daily operations in a really fast-paced environment, and the marketing function reports up to Christina. So she was pivotal in bringing digital marketing to fruition within the company. And so that's why she's here today. So welcome, Christina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And it's always great. You're in Arizona. You're in Tucson, Arizona, right?
That's right. Yep.
And
Yep. I'm actually born and raised in Tucson. So they always say that I'm a rarity, but I love it here.
you are a rarity. So for those of you who don't know, I'm based in the Phoenix area, not an Arizona native, but I attended the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona. And it's a wonderful place, special place in my heart. And so I always love when I get to talk to other desert dwellers.
That's awesome. That's great. Yes, Tucson is so beautiful. And hopefully you're still a Cats fan.
I am, bear down. And I have twin boys that are at rival schools. I've got one, we just moved into ASU Polytechnic, and one we moved into U of A. And I got to be honest, Christina, I refuse to wear any ASU anything, even though I've got a kid going there. It's like the rivalry runs deep.
That's great.
Well, we're not here to talk about U of A and ASU rivalries or Tucson or Phoenix. We are here to talk about intelligent inbound. And so let's start with just really broadly, what does inbound mean in your revenue organization that you have at Pyx Health?
Sure. So our customers are payers right now. So since we went into market in 2018, we have always sold to the health insurance payer space. And so really for us, our buyers are the executives at the big national health insurance companies. We specifically focus on Medicaid and Medicare payers. And so more of those vulnerable populations that they're serving.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, inbound in particular, that means for us that we're getting, or either at a conference or through digital, those executives at health plans coming into us and saying, hey, I want to learn more about Pyx, or I heard about you, or there was a referral out in the world. And so, as you mentioned, bringing digital to Pyx, we're only about a year into digital. And thanks to SmartBug really for helping us do that. And so for us, inbound in digital is relatively new for us.
And it seems to be also, I mean, it's still very new for the healthcare industry as a whole. Would you say, I mean, when you brought digital into Pyx, but you've got this vast experience in the healthcare space, what has shifted that you've seen? Like, why does digital and inbound make sense for this part of the market?
Yeah, I think healthcare, although innovative in many ways, also is very traditional. So if I think about traditional marketing, that's typically how healthcare does it. And so even when we first started, we got a lot of our sales traction doing those outbound efforts. So we would do direct mailers to these folks. We had someone who did cold calls for a little while. And I think that really for us, what shifted is when COVID happened and conferences stopped. People weren't in the office anymore. There was a really big shift in how are we going to connect with these executives that we want to get in front of. We can't do in-person visits anymore. And so it was like, we needed something new in our toolbox. And so digital made a lot of sense to us. And it also made us really take interest and look at our website to say, hey, it was always around for brand recognition, for someone to land, for someone to say, oh yes, this reputation is there, but it was never really a tool to attract. And so again, in that same effort, had to make a big investment into the web as well.
And I mean, we've heard this from a variety of industries, folks that they literally couldn't do what they were doing before, right? Like you couldn't travel, you couldn't go and drop into offices, you couldn't attend these conferences. And so you were forced to. I guess how do you prepare your team, your marketing team, your revenue team, just the operations team in general? How do you prepare for these shifts and changes? I think COVID caught a lot of people off guard, but it also, as people started to make adjustments, it's almost like they established some new processes for themselves. They got some new behaviors, right? So that if something like this happened again, they were better prepared.
Yeah. I think for us, I don't call us a startup anymore necessarily. We're big. We've raised enough money. We have enough revenue, but we still are kind of a fast-paced, high-growth startup in many ways. And so one, that's good because we are all used to pivoting and change and being able to see the value quickly when we're making those decisions. We're also a really transparent company. So I think with any change, whether we're shifting our marketing strategy or going into a new market, for us as a company, part of our culture is, and we say that it's clarity with kindness. It's one of our behaviors and to me, that goes with it. So for us, when we're making these changes, we're really clear on why we're doing it. And we can kind of all feel it at the same time. Like we need to make this shift. We're not seeing the traction that we used to. And for us, when we're doing this, when I think about digital specifically, we knew that we needed a leader who was not only an expert in this area, but was someone who this team would follow and love and trust that they were going to be successful in this new venture. And so that's kind of the first thing we did is we found our EVP of marketing, who was specifically very expert at digital. And really it was so fast in how she was not only to gather the team's trust and get things into action, but actually see results.
And then you mentioned that, having that domain knowledge as well. So was that a critical component? Because the things you're describing of, finding that SVP of marketing, that marketing leader. I mean, these are conversations I've had with countless executives and investors where they want to know what's more important, like the tactical skills of how to run digital marketing, run that kind of strategy and launch the strategies, being able to coach, connection to core values of the organization, domain knowledge of what it is that you do. Like when you were looking for that person, was it like even across the board? Were there some things that were more important to you than others? I'm wondering what we can learn because so many people have these questions.
Yeah. So it's not a super simple answer, unfortunately, of just, hey, this is kind of the roadmap to it, or at least this is what worked for us. But as I mentioned, our company is so strong in our culture. I mean, if you look at our website, if you get recruited by us, if you find a job posting, you kind of find us because you connect with our mission. It's strong. And so first of all, we have to find someone who's aligned with our culture, or otherwise they won't be successful or they won't love us. So that's kind of our first and foremost. And then for sure, we needed someone who has done digital, not only strategy, but tactically. We don't have a huge bench of a team because we're not a huge company. And so for us, we needed someone that was scrappy enough where they would get in and help the team learn. But also that could see, hey, you need to be here in 6 months, and then we're going to learn, and then we take you to the next level in the next 6. And so we were really lucky. I think that that's a little bit of a unicorn type of find. But again, I think if these companies can marry a strong culture with their search for this person, they're going to find who they want.
Yeah, I think that that strong culture is really key, and it's more reason to invest in your culture as an organization and to be really clear on, why you do what you do, and being as mission driven as possible. It's I have roots in nonprofit, and so it's like I know it's like why do you exist? And if you didn't exist, if your organization didn't exist tomorrow, like who would suffer? Right. And I remember
Yeah.
like being kind of plagued with that kind of question. And the more and I think nonprofit world lives and breathes that. The for-profit world has, I think, struggled a little bit more. But the more we can and we can learn from that, like those peers that we have, I think the better, because you're talking about fast growth, like really really quick to action, right? Really needing to be like all in on like what's the goal, what is the vision for this organization. To your point, there are people that are out there, and investing in your culture and like and showcasing like what you do. You're using inbound, a lot of like inbound tactics to then attract those that talent as well. I
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, totally.
Um, let's talk a little bit about like more changes, kind of, when you're in an industry that, could be a little bit volatile in a way, that could be impacted by the market, by politics, by the economy. um, you know there's constant converse talk about like, are we entering a recession, softening in the market, right? Impact on individuals. Like what do you see? Like, are there any threats, or maybe there are opportunities that you foresee for your business with the state of the economy, with the state of the market, with what's going on in our world today? Are those things that you're thinking about as you're rolling out initiatives at Pyx?
Yeah, sure. So I have been in healthcare since I graduated college. I started on the provider, so worked in academic medicine, went over to the payer side before coming to Pyx. And I don't think there's been 1 year in my career where healthcare in politics or how the economy is doing, it's not a industry that's not affected by it.
Right.
Which it also is why I love it. It's never
Yeah.
boring. There's always change. There's always things that are going to come up that you get to pivot to or from. But for us as a company, I think that we're all watching the economy. We're all listening to what's going on. We're anticipating what could be to come.
Mhm.
But for our business specifically, we serve vulnerable populations, so that Medicaid, Medicare. And so if there were to be a recession, or if the economy does make a change that's not for the better, for us, we actually are poised to help more people.
Mm.
And so for us, it feels like we have a really good opportunity to make a bigger impact. And
Mhm.
so we do have these conversations with our plans to say, hey, don't worry, we're here to help you. If your membership grows, that we're going to grow with you. I would also say that that is a common discussion too around the exchange market. So those folks that aren't on Medicaid, or they're on the marketplace and they can move plans. That's a big thing. COVID allowed a lot of people to stay on Medicaid rolls for a long time because they needed to, they should.
Mhm.
But some of that's coming to an end. And so how are these folks going to get served? So again, we're always talking with our plans about these things. But for us in healthcare generally, and more specifically in the space we're in, we want to be there to help if this happens.
Mhm.
We're not necessarily nervous of not being able to do that for our plans and our members.
How does your marketing strategy kind of tie in? Do you change message, like, are you changing messaging on a regular basis? Are you like targeting different entities? Like, is there any impact that external factors have on the way your marketing team actually operates?
Yeah, not quite yet.
Mhm.
Mostly because I don't think the economy has appeared as clear as it might be in a few months.
Sure. Yep.
Um, but our sales languages have changed, or at least our
Mm.
outreach has changed. So we know that if Medicaid rolls are being redetermined soon, we're talking to exchange plans about, hey, how are you going to find and take over these folks who have been on Medicaid that need services? Let us help you keep a continuity of care. So it allows us to kind of follow the member wherever their journey is. And so in that case, our sales language has changed, but our marketing hasn't. And that's partially just because we've always been in this space. We're not pivoting into it based on what's happening with the economy. So we're really familiar with it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Can we talk about sales a little bit, like sales enablement? How How do you go about enabling that sales team with those language changes? Is it, whose responsibility is that in your organization to ensure that that team is really up to speed? Because I have to imagine in your space, just like that, I could think of so many other companies that I and folks I know where those salespeople, they have to be really knowledgeable. They have to at least appear very knowledgeable, right? If you say the wrong thing, you can be dubbed as a charlatan and you don't know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So how do you organize that from like an operational perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, organizational wise in our company, and this isn't super common actually, it just kind of works for us, is that the marketing function, although heavily driving revenue, so I would say 70% of their work drives revenue generation, reports under operations. And then we also have a chief revenue officer that runs the sales account management team. So although, on an org chart split, very aligned, I think that has to do with the leadership of both teams being, best friends. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but the sense of like being able to call each other on the weekend and say, hey, here's what we're hearing in the market. What are you guys hearing and what should we make changes to? I would say our sales folks are incredible. They not only know the space so well, they've been in it a long time. We are looked at as experts in the space. And so our relationships with our plans are very tight. And so many times these changes in how we're having conversations it's coming from the market. It's them saying, hey, we have this problem. You guys have helped us solve it in the past. Can we talk about how we can solve this together again? So for us, and, I think it speaks to kind of the relationships that we're forming as we enter into these markets, is they're coming to us to say, hey, can we solution together? Which I actually love, because it means that we aren't saying the wrong thing. And actually we're looked at as true partners to them.
That's really great. And not very common, I don't think, right? And especially, because what you're saying is you don't even have marketing rolling up to the same executive that you had as sales, right? If I kind of understood correctly.
That's right.
And yet you feel like you've got really strong alignment between your sales team and your marketing team.
Yep.
Come on, there's got to be something. What's that secret, right? Like, how is it? What would? And I'm questioning that. I want to know. Like, I want to learn. Like, because I've always had over my career had pretty tightly aligned sales and marketing organizations, but my secret weapon was they all rolled up to me, so I was able to control that.
Yeah. Well, and eventually they might live together under revenue.
Sure.
I think that's part of just how we operate the business is, we're going to put these folks where it makes sense to organizationally, structurally, even just workload wise. And it's not perfect. So, don't get me wrong. I talked to the chief revenue officer today and she said, hey, I told your marketing director, I need 3 things. And so really, I think what it is just transparency amongst each other. And we're always going to be needing things. We're always going to be pushing and pulling between the teams. But we're all under common goal. And I think, again, that comes kind of from our startup background, is we are running to goals either for, for revenue, for reaching revenue targets, for maybe planning for our next financial event. Like, there are so many common things that we're all running to that it limits the friction within our operations, because we know why we're making these sacrifices, why we're having these conversations, why the sales team is asking for these things. And so sure, there's hard days and there's things that are like, gosh, do we really need to do that? But at the end of the day, when we're running at same goals that are very clear, that we're all aligned around, that we all can benefit from, like at the end of the day, we get through it and we do what we need to do for each other.
Awesome. How big of a role does data play in the way that your sales and marketing teams, the whole like this revenue org, the way that everyone's collaborating? Is there specific data that each team's looking at from each other that impacts the work that they do?
Yeah, and I think we're probably, I mean, we've definitely scratched the surface of data, but we're very data driven. But I wouldn't say that we're probably a company that is sophisticated, super sophisticated in the marketing sales data. I think I mean, we're still making sure that we are using sales enablement tools to drive our business and so forth. It's just because of our age and our experience in the market. But everything that the sales and marketing team do is driven by data. The things that they share that makes a common language for sure is for our inbound digital leads. I mean, we track them on a spreadsheet. We can very clearly, both teams, regardless of how we feel where inbound leads are coming from, we can see it. We can track those leads back to whether they were digital or they were, from a conference, from a salesperson. I think that data allows us to really understand what the other teams need, where we need to pivot, and gives us that common language of, hey, I think I worked for a health system in my early days. And so when we wanted to do marketing for doctors always wanted to do a marketing thing that they thought would be super successful, but we didn't use data to drive that. It was like, oh, okay, you want a brochure? Let's do a brochure.
Right.
And so it changes the conversation. It's not, oh, I want to do this. It's, we should do this because the data is showing us we need to do it. And to me, that is such an easier conversation to get aligned around and moves things faster.
Absolutely. And so you've got those sort of those like micro, like deep dive analytics, the like your lead numbers and where those leads are, those lead sources and conversion rates, I'm sure, and those win rates. But if you take a step back and you think about the way you communicate business success with your board, right,
Sure.
or like broader executive team, if let's say you could only share 3 key business metrics with your board that let them know like company is stable, company is doing well, right? Or maybe there's something we have to inspect. What would those 3 be? People usually get frustrated with me that I only give them 3, but I'm just curious, what's at the top of your list?
Yeah, I feel like these are common, so I don't necessarily know if it's going to be anything super fun, but revenue, obviously we're running at a revenue target for tons of reasons. And right, that is the lens. If you're not hitting revenue, why?
Right.
Is your digital not working? Are you not getting leads at conferences? Whatever it may be, it's such a number that tells you exactly how you're doing and how you're tracking to the year. For us, we're a tech-enabled services company, so we aren't just technology. We have a whole compassionate call center that takes care of members all day long. So for us, margin, we need to show that we are efficient with our people, but we're still caring and giving that services that we need. So again, another one, it shows that we're being fiscally responsible and not, over hiring or not using our resources wisely. And then I think the third one, really, when we're talking to our board, we started the year, I think, with, 60 employees. We're ending the year with 170. And so for us, retention, we also measure culture. So I'm sneaking a fourth one, and so I'm totally cheating on this, but we actually measure how we're doing against our culture. So every quarter we send out a staff survey to say, hey, are we living up to these things? And it's not just leaders, we're judging every single person. Are we as a company doing that? And so for me, that's another important one. Like, there's a lot of effort and money into hiring. And so once we're bringing these people on, are we finding the right fit? Are we the right fit for those folks? Are they finding happiness and fulfillment? And are we giving them the jobs that we said we would? So for me, that is kind of the holistic view of how a company is doing.
I love that, and I'm going to allow you the fourth. That's great because because I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it a little bit. What was there something, when did that start happening, right? That like kind of a quarterly, like, are we living up to what we said, who you thought we were, or who we said we were going to be? Are we living up to our culture of who we say we are? Was that something that is newer? Is it something that someone like founders of the organization brought with them from somewhere else? I mean, that is, it's, I mean, I guess it's not unique. There's a lot of like pulse surveys and things, but for you to call that out as being one of the key business metrics that you would report to the board on like the health of the organization, that's pretty significant. That to me
Yeah.
means like this is really, really important to you. This isn't just, talk, right?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
So that actually came from it's our only private equity partner. And so, gosh, it was 2020. We took on their name is Rally Day Partners. They're out of Denver. And their private equity is different. It's for founders by founders. So the four partners were
Mm,
founders of their own companies, which isn't super common. So they were all
yeah.
operators. And so when they took us on into their portfolio, they put all of their companies what they call Rally Day Accelerator Program. And it consisted of two things. It was not only strategy, so defining really what is your strategy and being able to put it into 5 kind of statements. But the second part was culture. And it's not that we at that point thought of our culture or, invented it. It's that we were able to, as a leadership team, directors and above, all sat in a room. We put what was already happening in the company onto a piece of paper to say, hey, we were able to solidify what this culture is. And it's different. It's not like 5 pillars. It's not authenticity or trust. It's not that.
Mm-hmm.
We call it our BBOs. It's our beliefs, behaviors, and outcomes. So we have 3 beliefs as a company that have behaviors associated with those, with the outcomes that we want.
Mm,
And really that was kind of the document that gave us a roadmap, not only to measure. So it's really easy for us to say, hey, as a company, are we prioritizing clarity with kindness? And people can say
mm,
yes, no, 1 to 5, whatever the scale is. But it also allows us to have conversations with our peers, with our teams. We do it as part of reviews. And so it's just this common language that we can all use to make sure that 1, we have that available in hard conversations, and 2, that it's embodies who we are and what we do every day.
mm-hmm. Oh, I think it's great, and I think we see and hear more organizations kind of marching to that beat, and so I applaud you for really doing it from the ground up, and your private equity firm for inspiring it. So it's great.
Yeah,
Um,
that was great.
um, let's go back to marketing for a second here, and I love to ask everyone to do a little bit of dreaming with me.
Yeah,
Maybe you've thought about this already, but I want you to pretend that I gave you just a blank check to spend on marketing. And I think it's just funny. People are like, "Oh, easy," but it's hard. I mean, I've been asked this
yeah,
question, right, about a business, like where would you spend it? I guess my first question is, I would love to know where you think you would spend it, but most more importantly, I'd love to learn how you would go about deciding where to put those funds.
Hmm. Um, I think deciding wise, it would definitely be a conversation not only with our marketing team. They're close to our current strategies and what we're seeing success in and where they're seeing interest in. It would also definitely be a strategic discussion on where we're going to go as a company. So are we entering a new market that I, want a blank check for, or are we trying to go after a new TAM? That would make it kind of an
Hmm.
easy thing. I think just kind of in your question, in the spirit of it, of just putting a dream out there and being able
Yeah.
to put a blank check towards something. We're a loneliness company, as you said. We were a loneliness company before COVID happened. So we used to have to get into a room with executives and kind of convince them that this was something that was really important for them and their teams to focus not only their time, but also their money in. Um, and then COVID happened and it became a more common conversation, right? Like all of a sudden, all of us had experienced it ourselves or our loved one. But really, we're category creators. There weren't companies around addressing loneliness when we were doing it. And so I still believe that that's part of what we do. And while we've made a lot of progress in that area, I think that you can probably agree, like PR has changed dramatically in the last 5-10 years, right? Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
it's a way different strategy and approach than it used to be. And so for me, like I would love to make a big investment in raising our profile as category creators and experts in the market. And these days that takes money.
Yeah.
And so to me, for us as a company, as a loneliness category creator, that's what I would write my blank check to.
Awesome. I think it sounds smart. So it's great. And the backup plan is leaning into the idea of inbound marketing, right? And really focusing on how are we driving value? How are we educating our audiences? How are we informing and letting that grow? That grow over time. Although, wow, a really impressive PR campaign would be really nice icing on that cake, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I think it goes hand in hand. I think that's what's so
Yeah.
powerful about digital and inbound marketing. Like
Yeah.
you have to, as my EVP says, you have to have it on surround sound. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think the work that our team has done around digital and inbound, putting out the blogs and the articles, creating us a category and continuing to have people come in and view us, like to me that is totally achieving what we're hoping for. But yeah, surround sound, that's what I want.
Yeah. I love it. I love that. I love that way of thinking. Um, so last question for you, Christina. As a business operator in a very fast growing organization, more than double the size of your team, right? In the year.
Yeah.
If there's someone is listening and they're also a business operator in a high growth organization like yours, what advice do you have? What do you think is the most important thing for them to be focused on right now?
um Gosh, I think for high growth, obviously you will grow, right? Like you will, as operators, we are so focused on getting to the end of the growth, right? Like it
Hmm.
is in our bones to do all of those things, to put down a plan, to execute upon it. We will get there. I think the thing that we need to remind ourselves to do is to pick our head up and watch it, appreciate it, check in with our people. Because I know me specifically as an operator, I can
Yeah.
completely bulldoze to the end and
Yeah.
not even appreciate kind of that journey. But I think most importantly too is like the team around you that helps that you do it with, like finding that connection, knowing that you're part of a team, not doing it on your own, that will make it fun. Otherwise you get burnt, like you
Yeah.
gotta find the joy in what you do. And so to me, that's what it is.
I love it. That personally resonates with me. Having been on that journey, having a former bulldozer
Yeah.
myself. It's always right there. It's always right there at bay, right?
I mean, I feel like it's like, in my bones.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's common.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's what makes it, I think it's what has made you successful, what makes you such a phenomenal asset to the Pyx Health team. So thank you so much for joining me. If anyone who's listening wants to learn more about like you, but also the work that you're doing at Pyx, where should they go?
Oh, you should definitely go to our website. It's easy. It's www.pyxhealth.com. You can learn all about us. You can learn about who we serve and really cool data on what we've been able to accomplish, and how we've changed lives. So, yes, please learn more.
Wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Please join us next week for another episode of the Intelligent Inbound podcast. You're going to get to meet another industry expert just like Christina. And if you learned something today, please pay it forward by rating and reviewing on your podcast listening platform of choice. Make it a great day, everyone.